Now, safe zones are interesting. They're not that hard to do, but they require you to do a bit of toning first, okay? The best and fastest toning to use are 12 and 1, all right? They're new words. They take a while to get used to, but they're in there and they're encoded in the DNA template. So if you can get used to them, they'll be the fastest. There's also other ones that can come from your own Maharic shield. They won't be quite as powerful as far as running the grid codes, because remember, the tribal shield has the core fire letter sequences that correspond to the planetary grids directly. Okay? So these frequencies are the ones that go with those grids, as well as the core of your DNA template. You'll get other frequencies on top of those. The Elohai song, the song of the soul. I was tempted to go into that, but I don't know. I didn't. There was a space. I felt this before, when a group could go up into that without getting awkward feeling, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not quite there yet. I didn't feel that it was going to work if I tried to take it from what we were doing. I was afraid it was going to break up the frequencies we make, because I knew we were making some good connections with the tribal shield. Now, to hear the soul song, that's a little different. This is something we could do here, but I think it would probably be better if you practiced it yourself, because people tend, especially if you're not like family, you don't know each other really well, you tend to, hold yourself a certain way, and you don't like to, go playing with, it might be embarrassing to just play with my voice and see what comes out. What I'm asking you to do is, when you're home, or when you're alone, or when you're in the shower, or someplace where you don't have to worry about anybody hearing you but you and your crystal self, know that you have a soul song. You have a soul song every moment. And what's wonderful about it is it changes all the time. Yet, within a cycle of change, it always comes back. It may be a 12-year cycle before you ever hear that same set of sounds coming out again, but it cycles. It's as if there are 50,000 different tunes on that jukebox, and you start with one and you cycle through them all, and you say, geez, every time I do this thing and try to let my soul sing, it comes out with something different, never knows the same song. It actually does. There's sets of frequencies that the soul is stimulating, and they go in cycles. And once you finish one round, then there will be another round of it, until you have all those frequencies open in the body. The reason it's important to explore the concept of a soul song, and a soul song is something, it's a song that you don't tell it what to do. You let it do what it needs to do. If it needs to go low, you go low. If it needs to go high, if it needs to go off tune, let it do that too. Because sometimes, if you let something go off tune long enough, it rebalances itself and brings itself back into tune. Sometimes it just needs to get the sediment out of the network, And you may actually find, if you thought you were a person that never could carry a tune, you may be surprised if you keep trying to carry one and you keep getting it where it's not. You may just find all of a sudden it starts to go on an upswing. Or all of a sudden, oh wait, I'm finding new ranges here, new frequencies. That means you're opening frequencies in the body. It's very important, if you're going to do grid work, and do it seriously, and I mean grid work on your own body or grid work on the planet, you need to understand and respect the power of sound. We're taught in this society to control our sound at all costs. We're taught to keep our mouths shut all through school. We're taught to speak only in certain ways and not in others, which at times is a very good thing to teach somebody. We're taught to be uncomfortable with just free expression through the voice. If we can undo that, not to the point where we go and say anything we want to anybody and offend people, it's not about that. But if we can realize our voice needs to sing, our soul needs to come out, our fifth chakras tend to be very, very constricted in this society, in this global society, but particularly like civilized nations, as they call them, like America and Europe and things, where people are not. It's not third world countries. Actually, people in third world countries that are doing tribal dances, and they're hooting and howling, and they're doing runs across the plains, and they're going on walkabouts. Who's the civilized people here? These people know how to use their energy in their bodies, at least to some degree. They're not doing it all right either. There's certain things that they get caught up in with the astral experiences, where they get manipulated and stuff because they open their fields to things because they don't know how to protect them on those levels. So they're not perfect either. It's not a perfect thing. I'm not saying that Western civilization is losing it and we should go be totally tribal. there are advantages to both sides. But if we could learn from the people who are, they actually have, it's a privilege in a certain way. We look at it from Western point of view and say, oh, well, gee, the tribal people, they live such poor lives. They don't have stuff. They live out in the woods and jungles, and they don't have cars, and, they don't have, like, bathtubs and 6 different kinds of soap in the closet, and, towels from the most expensive stores that are nice and soft. Okay, now, who is really imprisoned here? Usually, people that live in tribal situations, as long as there's enough food, just basic food to go around, they do not have to worry about getting in their car and getting on the highway 2 hours early so they can get to work through all the traffic jams, and then sitting behind a desk for at least 7 hours, probably more like 10, for not enough money, and then go home and then have to deal with not having enough money to pay the bills on their fancy house. Who is doing it right or wrong here? You know what I mean? We can learn from each other. People that live in a tribal situation, there are certain advantages they probably love to experience. That we have soft towels would probably be a real rush, when you're used to using, rough blankets that you made out of, you wove out of some kind of reed. A nice towel would feel good. Well, just like that might feel good to them, and it would be a good experience for the people in tribes, it would be a good experience for us to begin to allow that tribal part of us, allow our tribeness to start coming through. Allow ourselves to sing, allow sound to move through us. Sound and dance are very important. That doesn't mean you have to go out to the nightclubs, because really the type of dance you get there is more like astral field attachment. It's like astral dating service without your permission. You know what I mean? It's really funny. Try this sometime. If you ever play with like turning on the astral vision, where you just try to see with your eyes closed, what might you see, and a little bit frequency up. If you're ever in a bar, just try to see what you see. It'll blow your mind. And it'll really scare them when they see you seeing them. There are things that hang out in the astral field everywhere, but particularly in those kind of atmospheres, they're kind of very strange. So I'm not suggesting, go out to the nightclubs and do that kind of dance and hoot and howl and get drunk, and, that can be very, very non-useful to you. But if you can take some time and allow yourself to play with your voice. Your voice is a part of your power. The power of decree. The power to say, I am that I am, or I say, and so it is the power that you have the right of creation. Words are extremely powerful things. The power of decree is bringing your power back to yourself and realizing that you've had it all along, but your words and your sounds and what you allow sound to do. You are using sound as a manifestation tool. If you're just talking with it, but you won't let it sing, you're creating a blockage here. The soul likes to sing. I'll tell you that. From the higher levels, the universe sings. It really does. Everything. If you can get an idea of, if you go out in the woods at night, in the summer or in the spring, when you hear all the bugs, little crickets, and the real loud thing, everything's singing to itself and to each other. This is what it sounds like in the higher fields of your own higher identity. Words aren't even used after a certain point. These are linear, three-dimensional processes. You can get much more expression in sound tones that can move and bend. So what I'm asking you to do, if you want to keep your tribal shield activated and alive, these are the key tones, but you need to let your soul sing, because the more you start to open that fifth chakra, the fifth chakra and the heart chakra are involved with singing. The more you let that come out, the more frequency you'll be able to hold in your body, and the more you will keep that frequency alive in the body. That'll keep your tribal shield activated more often, and you won't have to do that as often. This might actually become fun after a while, once you get used to it and get to play with it. So I think if you're going to create a safe zone, you need to understand the power of sound, because you're not going to create the safe zone with light. Light will be an after effect. It's sound that you're going to create it with. To create a safe zone, you don't need to run. You do have to have your tribal shield activated, but if you happen to be doing the tribal shield stuff and working with this, 2 days before, the tribal shield tends to stay active for a while. I mean, even before with the small transmission, it was going to be active for a couple of weeks. And now with the little bit that we did, they said that's like a 4 weeks worth of energy boost. That's a lot. I think maybe 3 days, 3 hours, you know. But they stay active for quite a while. What you need to do is, if you have your tribal shield activated, you've done it recently, you've been playing with the sound tones. And you can also ask your Christos level to help. If you do the Maharic seal, the basic Maharic seal, which means if you're going to do any technique, that's the one you need to do, because that's what protects your fields, and that's what starts to reset your 12-strand DNA template to its natural order. So if there's mutations in there, it's the Maharic seal that'll begin the purging of them and resetting them. So if you really can't stand doing technique and there's only one you're going to do, do that one. You know. But with this, if you have your tribal shield activated by playing with the tones, like, you know, even if it's a couple days before, even a week before, you don't have to go through that on the site that you want to make the safe zone. You need to use a couple, though, of the suffixes. They're the keys. They're like openers. They're frequency openers. They open DNA templates. They also open planetary grid lines. Now, there are ways to calibrate combinations of numbers, but you don't have to know how to do that yet. That's going to come later. I don't even have the transmissions on that, but there's some really sophisticated programs you can use by combining the different numbers of the tribes and then using the tones that go with them, and then there's actually symbols that go with each of them. It can be very as complex as you want it to be, but we're going for simple right now. You know, I'm just learning this too. But we can take every third tone. So 1, 2, 3. That's the Amika-san. You have do. The do sound. Okay, so you have 1, then 4, 5, 6. So you have 3, 6. You have yum, do, yum, and 7, 8, 9. Ki. So you have do, yum, ki, and then 10, 11, 12. And then you're back to ra. So you can do it that way. It's best to do it, okay, there's a correspondence here with how the stargates are structured on the Cathara grid, that 12 tree grid that looks like the tree of life thing. There's a correspondence to this. If you look on the 12, I don't have the diagram of it right here, but if you look at the Cathara grid, running up the left side you have 3, 6, 9. Running up the right side you have 4, 7, 10. And running up the middle, you have 1, 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. Okay? That's the middle pillar that actually has the power to move either the other sides. But there are some very special frequencies that go with the 3, 6, 9 combination that have to do with the path of, it's actually, the way I've seen it taught, they actually reverse it. The path of true mercy is the path up through the 3, 6, 9, because they are the guardian gates. Okay, it goes right down to stargates. Who's controlling what stargates? Well, the 3, 6, 9s are still going up to 11 and 12, are still under control of guardian races, Emerald Covenant races, Elohai and those guys. When you go up in the universal stargates, you go up to 4, it's controlled by Nibiru. 5 is half controlled by Nibiru, actually Anunnaki that were from the Nibiru that are in the Pleiades now. You have 6 is okay on our side. You have 7, it's the Arcturian gate. That's controlled by Nibiru and Buddies, Arcturians. So you have, this is the path, the one going up on the right. That, yeah, they want you to go up that way. Sure, they'll tell you it's easy. Yeah, right. It's like walking into a net. So when you're using the frequencies that go with those gates, you're better off using the ones that are clear, because it's going to entangle you temporarily until you really can hold your Maharic seal good and stuff. You don't need to play with the gates that are on the 4, 7, 10 side. So take the 3, the 6, the 9, and the 12. Play with those for a while. Or even take the middle ones. They're not too bad. So that would be 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. Did I miss any? No, 1, 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. So if you're actually combining frequencies when you do this, and since these tones go with your tribal shield, which goes with the deep coding in the templates of the grids, these are your Stargate codes. Those Stargate correlations, using the lineup of how the Stargates are positioned in the universal structure on that Cathara grid, on that 12 tree, would make sense, because you're dealing with the same things. You're dealing with the frequencies that have to do with the DNA template, the grids, and the Stargates. So play with that for a while if you want to. Now, we can use these. You can pick one You can use the whole thing if you want to, but what we're going to do, we're going to use the 3, 6, and 9, and 12, but just the suffixes, just the activation suffixes. So you'd basically run your Maharic seal. So you showed up on a spot and you decide, I want to make this a safe spot. I'll make this a Q zone. Show up on the spot and run your Maharic seal. That doesn't mean you have to go through the 900-year process of it. Okay, if you're working with that process on a tape where you're letting it kind of beam into your brain and you're doing it, you don't have to always do every step of it. As long as you're doing it sometimes where you're imprinting the body with the right way to do it, you can simply imagine the Hierophant symbol, the 6-pointed Star of David in pale silver. Use the breath to run it down into Earth's core. Use the next inhale to bring it up to 12 inches below the feet, the Maharic seal, and push it out. Then use the breath to bring the whole star up to the 14th chakra and link it there. And then watch it pull the pillar up with you. So you can do it really fast. You can throw it down, pull it up, push the shield out, pull it back up, and pull the pillar with you. You have a temporary Maharic seal. It's not going to be as strong, as if you use the other one, but it'll be fine to do a Q site. Okay? Now, to do a Q site, you do that first. And then simply take the combination of suffixes that you're going to use. Here, we're going to use do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Okay, now what can we do with them? Do, ki, ra. First, stand in your power and try to feel the frequency of the Maharic current running through you. This is the Maharata current that you're pulling through, which means you're moving through the Antankarana. Remember we talked about the Antankarana being the 9-dimensional pillar? When you start bringing the Maharata through, you're pushing the Antankarana into temporary activation to bring it through. You first need to feel the current running, and that's simply a breathing process. Breathe it up from the earth, and when you exhale, feel it go up, as if it just took on a life of its own and went up. And then every exhale, bring it more, up to the heart chakra. And when you exhale, it just goes on its own, up. And it's going to circulate in the system. It's actually going to form a figure 8, or an eternity symbol. As it's going to go up, it's going to cross through the chakras, come back down through the heart chakra, and back down. The idea is to get a feel of it in the body, because this is the energy you're going to use to create that safe zone. So if you can hardly feel it, that means you didn't build it enough. That means you're not going to have a very strong safe zone. Okay? So you need to feel it. It's worth it. Even if you sit there and meditate on the site for a while, just while you're bringing up the energy until you feel enough there. Okay, this is a good deposit, because you're depositing something in the grids, right? Once you get the frequency up to where you can, I have some energy here. This should be a good thing to deposit in the grids. That should hold. Okay? Once you do that, then simply you can stand or sit. It's better to stand because you get the full vertical running through the feet, but you can also do it with the bottom on the ground, sitting on the ground. And simply, you can word them or you can sing them, which here we go again, singing these, right. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Any tone you want. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Let it be yours. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. And start them a little slower so you can feel the resonance of each one, because that's what you're putting in the grids. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. And feel this energy moving down, as if the sound is going down your main vertical current into the grids. Feel it moving down your legs and out the bottom of your feet, so the bottom of your feet tingle. Dom ki ra, dom ki ra. Try to feel the sound vibrating on the bottom of your feet. Dom ki ra, dom start to feel other tones come through that are your soul tones, let them come. Now's the time to let them move. Let the Elohi in you sing. Let it move through you. It's you. When you feel that your soul has sung enough of its song, keep going if you want to. But when you feel that your soul is done for now, go back to the Dom Ki Ra as the close. Dom Ki Ra, Dom Ki Ra. And the last one, be very low. Finish doing that at a site. Stay still for a few moments at the site. You've created a still point. Don't move in it yet. Let it set. Because you're setting that still point in the planetary grids. You're giving the earth the gift of a still point of D12 frequency. This is a code that you've set in the grids. And you set it in by letting your soul song come out after the keynotes, after the suffixes. You're setting your signature to it, so you're adding the frequencies that are yours to bring to this planet. You're giving a special gift. You're adding to the healing. And in response, the planetary grids are sending up a co-resonance. You probably won't hear it at first, but if you sit in a quiet space, particularly if you do it in nature, in a park or in the woods or something. If you do this procedure that we just did, and then you sit in the still point afterward, very quietly, you will begin at some point, eventually, you will start to hear what's called the back song. The earth will send a song back to you. It's sending frequencies back to you in response to what you sent to it. And if you're really still and quiet and get yourself really relaxed, you will be able to begin to hear as if a song, a frequency is playing in your own head. It's a back song that comes back from the planetary grids when you have set in a piece of the Christos template. That back song will help to heal your grids. It will help to move and shift things to a higher level inside of you. This is only the beginning of learning how to use the power of the sound and the power of the DNA template and the power of the earth grids. And every one of them run on one thing that's the same, and that's love. Unconditional Christos love. We teach a lot of technical things in our paradigm. We teach you the science, because without the science, It's like trying to swim across the ocean with no arms. It's going to be very difficult. You have to kick really hard. But just because we teach the science does not mean that it's not built on love. And it is absolutely heart-centered, but it is the most highest heart-centered. It is the Christos heart-centered. What we just did right here was an example. Now remember, we used a three-tone, the threes, the 3, 6, 9, and 12 combination. They're master activators, okay? You'll have a copy of these if you haven't written them down. This sheet will be available for you guys tomorrow, so you can have a copy. But using those combinations, and you may want to experiment later. You could feel that you want to use other combinations. But if you're going to use now you can use 4, or you can use 7, or you can use 10, but if you're going to use a 4, 7, 10 combination, make sure you've got your Maharic seal up strong, okay? Because that'll just open some of the grids that are, that are not fully safe to open right now. It shouldn't hurt you, but if you don't have a strong Maharic seal, you may pick up some astral stuff that you don't want to pick up with that. All right, so we're just saying basically, we recommend the left side of the pillar, the left pillar and the thing, the 3, 6, 9, 12. But play with it. Don't be afraid of 4, 7, and 10. Just try not to use them in that combination. Go 10, 4, 7 if you want to, but the 4, 7, 10 is the coding for the right side of the Cathara grid, which is the stargates running up on the right. So just try to stay away from that sequence of combination. Okay? Yeah, hand up, yes? Yeah, actually we can. It takes a little bit more to throw it, okay? Throw it away from where you are. At first, while you're getting used to building it, it's best if you can put your body on the spot. Because first you just have to get used to this. This is like a new old technology. Once upon a time you knew this by heart, right? We all did. But it's like we have to remember again. And the body has to remember what to do with it. So it's worth taking the time, run your Maharic seal, and then begin with the tones. And what really makes it powerful is if you're not going to get much back tones or a back song back if you don't let your soul tones come through. All right, this is where the gift is. If you give the gift and allow and expose yourself to the planet, it will give the gift back. The other ones, you'll set a safe zone. You will anchor the D12 frequency there. And now these are interesting. These are Q zones. I like to use the word Q zones because they can be used for more things than just being safe. Okay? They do happen to create safety. They are spaces. Keep track of where you put them, just in case things get weird on the planet, for a couple of reasons. If it gets only semi-weird, where it's nice to know there's some place that you can go to be safe, and if you happen to have riots in your city or something for some stupid reason. I mean, cities do that once in a while, especially out in California. There hasn't been too much of that here. But if you want to go someplace safe, keep a list so you remember where they are. I mean, I know that some people are like, I'm going to go drop them everywhere. I'm going to go to the supermarket and I'm going to put one down. It's like, this is good. Go for it if you feel like doing it. You know what I mean? But keep track of the main ones, because you may have so many that if it ends up in a time where you actually need them and you're under stress and you need to go to one, you forget where it is. You forget where all of them are. It depends on how much frequency you set. But if you notice, I was amazed when they told me how long, after we did this little exercise, how long? 4 weeks? I was there maybe 4 hours. That was hardly, it wasn't as if we'd built a huge amount of frequency and got perfect harmonies going or anything. That little bit of sound stimulation did that much. So when we set these in the grids, they're going to hold for a while. I'm going to get a commentary. First I'm going to guess. I would say they have about a 2-year lifespan. That's just the feel I'm getting. And I'm going to see if I'm right or wrong. I'm getting it close. More like 3.5. Okay. I've been corrected. It's a long time. I'm saying about 3.5 years. You set what we just did, which was set one down. Now it's probably not going to stick in the floor and in the carpet very long. It'll pass through those. But when it hits the planetary grids down under here, we just set a safe spot. And actually we set quite a big one, because it wasn't just me doing this. They go out about 5 yards, one person's. But if you get a big group, imagine the size of them you could make, right? They're like exponential. They go out and out and out. This is some of the things that we're probably going to be doing, or are being asked to do when we go to Kauai and things like that. We're going to do some of this tomorrow when we go into running a round table. Because this wasn't a round table. This was activating our tribal shield and making a Q zone. Now we're going to take it tomorrow to the next step. It'll probably be toward the end of the day, because I really want to share with you a story about history. That history can be very boring, but when you hear this one, the present will make a whole lot more sense. And then you'll know what we're dealing with, and I think it will help. But then we will get into the running the rainbow round, and we will use this again. We're going to try it again. But we'll probably go right to setting the Q zones. So we'll start there. Okay? Yeah.
I'm playing with 12 and 1. I have a 4.5-year-old granddaughter. We were singing together all the time. But we have fun with it.
Right.
Do I have to run my heart shield for her?
It's a good idea. What you basically do with children, now you kind of basically, before I do anything on anybody, I send up kind of a query I pictured this disc of pale silver light hanging up over their head, symbolizing their Christos level self. And I send a line of pale silver energy from my head out with a thought on it. Is it okay that I do this? And I will usually get a feel. If it's not, if it's something I'm not supposed to do, I've never got, ever, a response back that, no, don't do a heart seal for anybody. I mean, it's always been, yes, please do. You know what I mean? And all you have to do with children is you activate your own, and then inhale and push the breath and pretend your breath is expanding into your shield, right? Then inhale it back in to a point under your feet, and then very gently exhale it out to 12 inches below the feet. A little spark of light from yours to 12 inches below their feet, where their Maharic seal will be. See it hit there and then pop up a little to 6 inches. So you're hitting where their Maharic seal is in the center and bringing it up to the 12th chakra to stimulate it. Okay? That's usually all it takes. And it'll pop. Yeah. Because it's a natural phenomenon. It's not something you're making happen in them. You're just giving it a little frequency to stimulate the natural response. Yeah. I recommend it for anybody's kids and babies and everything. It won't hurt anybody. It's part of your natural anatomy. Yep.
I just wonder if anyone in the group and yourself was aware of the fact that we were all singing in the same key, a major key. No one was singing. I think I heard one note that was a minor note, but that doesn't matter. But the point is, what was the key? Does anybody know? I think it was either C or B. I don't know.
They tend to go into the natural
I'm
state
going
when
to
they just sing.
I didn't find that key when I get home. But is that natural for a group to find?
I don't know. I thought we sang it awfully together.
Everyone was singing
You were
in the
just
same
starting
key.
to do something, and I also started to feel the Elohai presence come through.
What?
The Elohai presence, the level of each of us. The level of each of us that is connected to density 5, to the Renal in density 5. That's part of our... A part of our consciousness is an Elohai, an Elohim. Okay? Not an Anu Elohim, but an Elohai Elohim. That's the part of our consciousness we had to leave up in density 5 to get to density 4 and then density 3 and come on down. So because they were the founders race that the primary coding of our genetic template came from, we still have a part of our consciousness there. And when we begin to open here, we can let that part of ourselves sound. It brings through the soul tones and the oversoul tones and the avatar Christos tones if you let it. And sometimes you can take a group of people who've never met each other before, and half of them don't even like to sing, but if they can get into that space where it's an opening that happens inside where you just feel this part of you with you, and it just moves through you and sing. And I've heard people go for 45 minutes. Just these beautiful, high, like ethereal tones and harmonies. And you go, whoa, look at this. We couldn't have done it if we tried. I was starting to feel that happening here, where some people were getting into that space, where it was starting to harmonize the waveforms in all of the groups. So I think that's what you were picking up on. You were right. There was something strange about that we were all much more organized sounding together than I would have thought, just coming into exercises like this. But try to find the Elohai voice in you. It's your voice. It's not something you're channeling from somebody else that's a space alien. I don't recommend that at all, these days, because most of them are trying to do something to you. But your own self, your Christos self, and your Elohai self, that is part of the Christos template and part of your Rishi template. It has a beautiful voice, and it will heal you if you let it sing. Sometimes there are people that open to that part of themselves so completely that they will sing, and they can literally heal illnesses just by singing in the presence of someone ill, because they allow the full spectrum of frequency. If we remember, sound is a frequency of vibration. Everything is made of frequency. Certain sounds can destroy, others can heal in an instant. You start to tap your healing power if you let that part of yourself from density 4 and density 5, and I don't mean D4 and D5, I mean density 4 and density 5. There's a difference. Density 5 is dimension 15, 14, 13, okay, and density 4 is 12, 11, and 10, okay? So I have to clarify sometimes because it's easy to confuse, oh, D4, density 4, no. No, density 4 is much higher than D4, okay, yep.
I can't sing at all, and I just found myself singing.
You'll amaze yourself. First of all, we get used to telling ourselves we can't, so we don't. You know, everybody can sing. Nobody said you had to sing good, you know, but everybody that has a voice and can sing. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've seen that move through people, and it brings tears. There's this release that happens where it just comes up, and it's like a cosmic cry, you know, like a good cry, you know, letting it out, just finally, like a release of something that's wanted to express for so long. Okay, take a sip of soda. Does anybody have any questions? These codings are for the angelic human template. Okay, the angelic human template was the angelic humans are appointed as guardians over these grids, so their DNA was created with the patterns of these grids. So really, like an Anunnaki could use this, and it's not going to open the grids for them because they don't have the template. All right, they have to, for them to access the grids, they have to either get control of one of our bodies that has the codes, which they like to try to do through body snatching, or they have to manipulate things with mechanical technologies to run frequency combinations, and that doesn't work as well. Okay, they can cross pole shift that way, though. Okay, well, yeah.
DNA strands, and I know you have been teaching that DNA strands are very difficult to open up. It takes a great deal of time and effort, but it seems to be everybody and his brother
I know,
is
everybody's
talking
a
about
cross-consciousness too,
all
aren't they?
we have to do is a kinesiology, and we can get you open. I would
love to have a discussion with the people who are saying, oh, well, here, wham, zam, there you go, you're 12-strand activated, right? There's so much of this happening in the New Age movement, it makes me want to laugh. Because if they were 12-strand activated, they'd be able to walk on water, disappear at will. I did just a few of the things they'd be able to do. They'd be able to levitate before your eyes, all right? They're walking around saying, I'm 12-strand activated, I'm in Christ consciousness now. With this ego about this big, I'm so superior, I made it, you didn't get it. You know, I mean, they're being tricked. Most of the stuff is coming through its original source. We're Anunnaki channels that we're telling, oh, do this, and then there you go, you've got your 12-strand, oh, now we'll do your 13th. They're not teaching them mechanics. These people couldn't tell you what was in a DNA strand template if their life depended on it. They don't know about base codes, acceleration codes, fire codes. Some of them, actually, I found some of them picking up stuff out of my books and making it their own because, oh, base codes and acceleration codes sounds good, right? You have to be, it's like the difference between an authentic and a fraud. You know, if you're going to buy a Mona Lisa, you want to get the real one if you're going to pay a lot of money for it. When it comes to DNA, you want the real thing, or you're going to let somebody run a real deception on yourself. And the big one that's going to run it is yourself. If you buy into, oh, this is the easy way, that's too hard. She says it's hard. I don't want to listen to that. So we'll go do it this way. It's the easy way. There you go. I'm 12-strand activated. I don't have to do anything more, do I? I've reached it. I don't have to look anymore. I just have to follow. Who was it? Was it Angel Michael or who was it out there? You know, that told me how easy it was. Thank you. It was so easy. I have met people like this. One of them had the nerve to say to me, I move hurricanes all by myself. I said, really? All by yourself? No help from like God or anything? No, all by myself. Sometimes I'm so powerful I can't stand myself. Neither can anybody else. This is where these false teachings are really, really dangerous because they're playing on people's ego and trying to say, oh, it doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to work. It's handed to you. It's easy. There you go. Look out for that stuff. Believe me, if there was an easier way, if I could say, here, you're activated, I would have loved to. Because I would love to be doing other things except making chart packs that, all day long and things like this. If there was an easier way, I would be glad to give it to you. But unfortunately, it isn't something that just, bam, you decide it's going to be there and it's just going to happen overnight. You're dealing with physics, the physics of consciousness. So this is what that's about. It's about giving people a little bit of knowledge so they think they have it all. They run off with their egos, patting themselves on the back, thinking they've got it, when they don't have it. They don't have it, and they don't look for it anymore because they think they have it. It's a trick. I feel bad for people that are caught in that.
The level star manual on the internet says that you have to go through lots of pain in order to move ahead.
Especially if you use the Anunnaki program.
Well, she said she had to go, it's her personal experience of having to go through those pain for her
That's
own.
what, yeah, with that
And
one.
then she says everyone has to do that. And why is she so interested in moving people ahead? She's representing the Anunnaki.
Jaleel is a body snatch job.
Yeah, but why is she, her
I mean,
whole
she's
program-
not walk in. She's, excuse me, I'm coming in.
Yeah, but the program is essential.
This poor girl. I mean, where the one was in before that.
The program is essential. That's the program.
It
Yeah.
isn't ascension.
Pardon me?
It's being passed off as ascension. What the Anunnaki are trying to do, this is some of the stuff we're revealing in the book, the new stuff that's coming out, because at this point, it's no holds barred. We're letting the stuff out. We're showing what they've been doing. What they're trying to do is get people into an 11-strand activation, 11-strand reverse matrix activation. What 11-strand reverse matrix means is none of the strands can break. The 12th subharmonic in all of them is missing. They're trying to turn us into galactic humans,
But
which
can't
means...
they move you up? Can't she move up to the third, the fourth, the fifth, the same way we're moving?
Not exactly.
Well, not
They
exactly.
can have immortal bodies, but they cannot ascend because it requires full strand braiding. If you have reverse
Wait,
matrices...
ascend to where? She's only interested in going up to the fifth. I mean, that's where. We're not going to the ninth now.
Last
Maybe
time-
some people are.
Last
She's only
time
interested in
I
moving
read
to-
Jalela's stuff, in her first book, it says she's the matriarch, wife of Devon from the 9th dimensional
Right.
royal house of Avion.
Right.
Last time I checked. This is, you got to be careful with these people.
But she's
Okay?
interested in moving us up past the same point where we have to go in order to stop the bullshit. She expresses that very clearly. That same program.
Explore it. If you find good stuff in it, take it.
I say this is what she's presenting.
Right.
So why is she so interested in moving us up to the same place, to save the earth? She's interested in saving the earth.
She's claiming to be, right?
Pardon me?
She's claiming to be, right?
Yeah.
Now the lady herself, the lady herself, what's left of the lady herself, I don't have anything against her, but I know who she's working with. All right? The Palladian Lemurians were used to be called the Luciferians, okay? Because there was the Lulatan family of the Tob Enki group, and there was the Satane family of the Marduk Anunnaki group, okay? They mixed and they created a blend that became the Luciferians. They entered bioregenesis programs here, entered the Emerald Covenant, and then after they got their strands up to the Anu Melchizedek level, where they had access to a 6-strand template, they then told all the guardians to stick it, and they went in and they raided this race, and they corrupted the gene pool here to the point where our guys had to come back in and continually reseed the 12-strand pattern. These are part of the team of the Atlantian conspiracy that we're going to talk about tomorrow, and it's kind of like, I end up in the position where I'm so sick of looking at the lies that are being told to sucker people. I used to be very, very nice about it, where I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to say that I'm, against or for anybody's work. At this point, I have been nothing but bashed while I kept my mouth shut for almost 2 years. All right, people making stuff up about me. I mean, this nasty stuff. Well, I'm trying to be nice and say, okay, yeah, I know you're running a bad agenda, but I'm not going to tell because I'm just not, it's not worth picking a fight. At this point, because they have, literally, they're part of the groups that have entered the United Resistance, and they are trying to cause harm here. All right, and they have done it. When you see some of the history, I'm going to bring some of the history tomorrow, show you about 30 different dates of things that have been done by those guys, because they were the prime players. Then maybe you'll understand why. I got to the point where I said, oh no, not them. You know, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to hide them anymore, because that is what's causing people to get hurt. At this point, well-meaning people think, oh, it seems like a nice book. You know, like I looked at her book, and the whole bit, the book seems harmless. Yeah. I traced the energy signature behind it. It isn't harmless. It's a nice little candy cane to lead you into the next level. It's like leading a dog with a sweet, you know? Yeah. That's what they're trying to do here. And it's unfortunate. There's more information. Tomorrow we'll get into that, because this is some of the stuff I was planning to reveal. There is something called the Luciferian Covenant that was signed in 9,560 BC, right before the flood. They staged the flood. They did it on purpose, and it progressively infiltrated and took over since then. Okay, there's a few little things. I'll tell you how we lost our memory in this process too. That happened in 3,470 BC. Okay, so there's some things attached to her. Not just her. It's not that I'm anything against Delilah. It's who she's working with. That's the problem. And they're a huge group. They're working with a bunch of different channels under different names. But they're the same group of people. And they don't mean well. They really need some, like manners put on them. But meanwhile, you just need to protect yourself. I have nothing against them. I actually had Anunnaki cycles where I had to live with these people and trying to help them with biogenesis. Because it is a loving space. It's sad to watch a race that has been helped and helped and helped get to this height and then fall flat on their face and go back into dominion again.
Take out his ruler.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. So there's a lot to talk about where Palladian Nabooians are concerned and who they really are. This is some of the stuff that's coming out in the book, because they broke them right down. They showed you where it came from 250 billion years ago when the first conflict started in this time matrix, right down through to show you who was who was who. And there's several different versions of Anunnaki. So that's what we're dealing with, with those guys. Yeah.
Is it true also about the Messianics group?
Here we go.
The reason I ask you
I will say a very general. All right, the question was something about Barbara Messianics.
the reason I ask you that is
I'm not going to get in too far into the, that one, or that one, or that one. I'm not here to call names. I will simply give a few references. 99% of the Palladians, whoever called themselves Palladians, are the Palladian Nabooian Luciferians, or they're the Bellicudium, which are the ones that they corrupted on Terra that used to be Turnicium humans that they turned into half-reptilians because they got involved with the Anunnaki and the Drax. So Palladians you need to be real careful with. There are 4 groups that have to do with Alcyone that aren't out to get us. They're all of them are Ceres groups, which are one of the guardian races out of the Seraphi family lines. And they're primarily either human-looking or avian human. They look like that's where you get the angel kind of things. So there are about 4 decent groups of Palladians, but most of them are coming through. This is part of the plan. This whole channeling movement and the whole New Age movement was part of the plan. Okay, so just take it all with a grain of salt and keep your heart seal up and trust yourself to be able to feel the difference. You can see the goodness. There can be goodness on the outside. And that's what tricks a lot of people. Fine, take the goodness part. That's not going to hurt you. Just be careful what is trying to move you into frequency-wise. That's my only advice with that kind of stuff. Oop,
it's always been fascinating to me because the various prophetic books that have been written about Bible, the prophecies, and the 12 tribes. Are you going to cover the relationship between your 1 through 12 and any specific tribes? Basically, what I have read, and I conferred with someone who was quite an expert on it once, each tribe basically is related to a country, almost exactly. In other words, Benjamin was Britain, and I'm not sure what America was.
It's interesting, though, because the names of the tribes They're the changed names. The ones we came to know as the 12 tribes down here, they were the Anunnaki names. The Hyksos kings names. They're called the Hyksos kings. Hyksos. They're the ones that in the desert kings that invaded Egypt and they got kicked out after a while. There's a whole lineage that came out from Atlantis here. There's some of the stuff I will talk about. I was not going to go that far in tomorrow's workshop, but I think with this group I will. You have a right to know if I... Okay. Okay. But I will touch on some things because you guys are right there. You're with me so far. I'm going to share some things with you tomorrow that I was going to wait until they're fully published in detail in the book because I don't like to give stuff out of context that might be controversial that people will, go about before they see the context that it's in. But I'm going to share some things with you about the 12 tribes and the stories we've learned about the 12 tribes and the stories we've learned about Moses and the stories we've learned about Abraham. I'm going to find out who these people are. Enoch, too. Enoch's been a buddy of mine, at least since 1983. That's when he entered the Emerald Covenant. Anyway, so we'll talk more about that stuff tomorrow. Tomorrow ought to be a real war. We might not video on that day, so just get that off video.
It's recommended that you work with a single terminated quartz crystal, approximately 3 to 4 inches in diameter and 4 to 6 inches in height. Alternatively, a quartz crystal of these proportions can be visualized. Clear quartz is a very important element of human evolution because it's composed of consciousness which is the same as that which composes the human DNA template. This means that the specific scalar waveforms that form the human DNA template are the same form as those found in the quartz crystal, thus a natural co-resonance between the consciousness of quartz crystal and the core of human consciousness that forms the DNA template. By acknowledging this connection, the structure of quartz crystal provides keys that unlock patterns of encoded information that goes back to the times when the human DNA template was first created. These programs are called the crystal keys. They are called keys because they correspond directly to the electrotonal commands needed to release the higher codes between the DNA strands, which in turn allows for accelerated strand braiding. Strand braiding is the key to expediting consciousness expansion and ascension. Through strand braiding, new chemical entities become active in the body, glandular and neurological structure, that change carbon elements in the body structure which otherwise serve to block progress. The process associated with this exercise will open up what's called celestial stems and branches. These are energy interface conduits between the physical nervous system and the neurotransmitters, the nadial lines that connect the physical to the etheric and outer field circulatory system, all of which connects the higher levels of consciousness and the highest levels of DNA to the lowest portions of the physical body. This technique represents a mathematical journey which bypasses certain organic sequencing programs that allows for conscious override of the genetic times codes that regulate how fast a physical body can integrate higher consciousness. This process enables the body to step out of time, which means that the process suspends the normal rate of code activation as controlled by the planetary grids. With practice, your conscious self can enter hypertime. When working with this technique, the point of greatest benefit lies in being in the crystal temple. To achieve this, to suspend the limitations of density and the effects of the time cycle of the planet, it's important to take the time to feel the sensations, and particularly those associated with color. That's when you really pull the frequency into your body fields. This technique should not be used more frequently than every 6 days to begin with. In time, it may be used every 3 to 4 days. Working with this technique more frequently will only serve to defeat its object because the body system will not be able to cope and will simply shut down. Okay, let's start the technique. It's called the crystal keys. Okay, holding the crystal, and this now becomes your personal template. You are about to make a journey into the crystal. Feel the crystal and just spend a moment making a deep and strong connection with this crystal. Now just imagine the crystal is in your pineal gland, inside your head at its center. You can try to feel the weight of it in your brain as you hold it up on your forehead, as if you're holding it at your third eye. Visualize it in the center of your head, and visualize your pineal gland inside the crystal. In your mind's eye, see a small version of yourself, just as you are now, walking along a deep sapphire blue path. And this will lead you to your crystal temple, somewhere up ahead. Take your time on this path and try to sense yourself pulling the frequencies of the deep sapphire blue path up into yourself. All else around you becomes dark. The pineal gland, inside the crystal temple, is like a tiny, multifaceted crystal ball, and this becomes the objective. Continuing to draw frequency from the D10 light as you enter the temple. Entering the temple now and finding the tiny, multifaceted crystal ball inside. This crystal ball actually radiates energy which will almost feel like a fuzzy outer shell. And your little self begins to explore this fuzzy barrier, transferring the feeling of the energy sensation from your little self to your own physical feeling. We can now mimic what our little self has found and re-experience this by bringing our own hands up to our shoulders and feeling the energy barrier. As you do this technique more and more, the barrier will begin to be progressively further away from your physical body, and you can actually chart your progress with your technique by measuring the distance. Return our attention now to our little self and resume the focus so that sensing the force field, imagining our little self cupping its hands as if it's attempting to hold water, and as it does so, give a command which will be heard on many levels. I now command my book of knowledge. I now command my book of knowledge. When delivered with certainty and knowing, a glowing crimson ball will just pop into the center of the small self's hands. You can see this ball begin to spin, and it spins faster and faster, and suddenly turning into liquid silver light in the palms of your hands. As the small self raises its cupped hands to pour the liquid light into its own crown chakra, you can mimic this action When the little self has transferred all of the liquid into the crown chakra, remove your physical hands from your head. Just allow this process to take as long as is necessary. And when you do remove your hands from your head, notice that the little self feels a flutter of energy as waves of silver light pass through its entire body. Meanwhile, the crimson ball is nestled in the heart center, and try to connect with that. And once you have made the connection with the crimson ball at the heart center, bring your attention back to your physical body. Feel the sensation of the sparks of liquid silver light fluttering through your own cells as you hold your connection with the crimson ball while you feel the liquid light. The crimson ball has the capacity to release locks on knowledge in an earthly capacity. Inhale, and on the exhale breath, breathe silver energy into the ball, making it expand. Breathing and exhaling into the silver ball, making it expand now. And just continue breathing, exhaling energy into the ball until it becomes the size of a grapefruit. Returning your attention to the little self. And notice now that it now opens and extends its right palm to receive a frequency key. It looks like a symbolic golden key. Mimic this action yourself by opening your right palm and holding it forward. You can almost feel a fuzzy presence 1 or 2 inches above your palm where the symbol key is manifesting in your astral form. Notice now that the little self has drawn its palms back together, transferring a mirror image of the symbol key into the left palm. Sometimes, from time to time, the color of the key may change, although the key will remain the same. The small self now opens the hands and puts the palms onto the force field surrounding the crystal, which holds the pineal inside. The symbols are transferred into the force field. Bringing the back of your physical hands up to your shoulders. Feeling the force field of the crystal. Inhale, and on your exhale, transfer the symbols into the field. This will temporarily release resistance in the field and allow what is present to move through. The small body now removes its hands from the force field around the crystal and simply walks through it into the pineal temple at the center of the crystal. You can almost sense or feel a swoosh as the little self enters, and you follow, discovering that the force field is mutable. As you move inside the temple, you notice that it has grown huge. In the center, you may notice a tiny gold and silver, almost casket-like box within a small pool of light, surrounded by the deep blue sapphire light. This box holds the jewel that you are seeking, and the little self knows the route to this box, and you follow any path that the little self takes. Everything around you is absolutely delightful, and everywhere is surrounded by deep blue sapphire light. You move forward, drawn by the knowing of that incredible small self, both together as if pulled by a magnetic beam. The tiny silver gold box, surrounded by blue sapphire light, becomes closer and closer. Again, the deep sapphire blue is all around, lush, rich, and very much alive. As you reach the small silver gold box and pick it up, it feels warm to your touch, warm and soft. As you open the box, rays of multicolored light radiate out, and you see the rays radiating from a small, perfectly formed crystal. The rays are the knowledge of self flowing up to you from the core template. The small self picks up the crystal and puts it into its mouth. You can actually mimic this yourself now as you feel the sensation of the tiny crystal on your tongue. Your little self swallows the crystal with absolutely no resistance at all, and the crystal moves down to the solar plexus chakra, seat of the 3D mind. You can feel yourself swallowing the crystal too, and feel it move down to your own solar plexus. This crystal holds all knowledge of your true self within and across all cycles. You can feel the crystal in your stomach now. It's a living entity. It will stay with you until its information, its knowledge, and its consciousness is absorbed by your body. You have actually several keys available, and each one takes 6 months to absorb, working with a 3 to 6 day cycle. During each 6-month cycle in meditation, simply return to the crystal point in the stomach, and the crystal ball will teach you the things that you need to know. Through this exercise, this can enable you to open up to very specific conduits of data. You can leave your small self in the temple to learn more, or you can bring it back into your mind, whichever feels more comfortable. You can also use this as a walking crystal exercise. This can teach your mind to be aware of the living presence of the crystal at all times. If you can sense its weight, feel it as much as you possibly can and as often as you can. In your waking awareness, the crystal provides much information pertinent to your state of focus at any given moment and will provide much support and much guidance.
Morning, everybody. Happy Easter. Okay. If I run around today with my finger in my right eye, it's because something went into it. It blew into it when we were driving in the car. So it's not a sign for anything. It's just my eye hurts. Okay. I think it's enough because we'll have this on once I work with the eyelash. Okay. Did anybody have any interesting, noticeable effects from the Emerald Awakening? Like, did you feel any energy running or anything? Did you? Yeah, I heard a couple of people had. There was one person had some like major energy running. I guess she was very sensitive to the, to changes in the body. But usually it's pretty mild. Okay. Today we've got a lot of ground to cover, and part of the ground is going to be I'm going to talk to you about some history. After I get done doing some of that, which is going to include talking a bit about the man that was called Jesus Christ, and it was interesting because I didn't plan on having this workshop on Easter. It just so happened that the dates they had available for the Source of Life were over Easter weekend. So it just so turned out, and they chuckled upstairs a little bit saying, we knew that. We had it planned that way. Because when we get into talking about history and we get into talking about the man named Jesus Christ, and who was he really? We know the stories we've heard, and some of us accept them, and some of us are part of religions that don't accept them. And that's okay, but the man himself was a person. He was a real person, and he was here at a certain time, and he was part of a team that was sent in to do certain things here. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because the Christ drama is the main part of history that came up to directly affect us and still noticeably affects us now as far as how our culture is structured and the ideas that we hold. We know very little about the true history of that because so much has been taken out of what was supposed to be the Bible that none of the true history records are there. We don't know why he really came other than the stories were told us that he was supposed to be our Savior. Now, when we're teaching Law of One spirituality, the concept of a Savior is not usually applied. You can have people that come in to help you find the inner Christ presence within. But if someone comes in and says, I'm your Savior, follow me, that's different. That's saying, give your power to me because you don't have any. Jesus Christ did not teach that. He did not look at himself as a Savior. He was out of the Magi Grey Line kings. He was one of the Grey Line kings. And they go back to seating 3 that we talked about yesterday, 798,000 BC, was when the Grey Line kings were last seated here in the Paladoria races. So Jesus, the man, was out of that lineage. He came to bring the message of the inner Christos, of the Maharata, and he came to bring certain translations of information from the ancient times that every time it was brought here, it would last a few weeks on the planet before they'd start manipulating it and trying to get rid of it. Because this planet has had problems with 2 things: fallen angelic races invading and coming in and trying to get control over our cultures, and Illuminati human races that would assist them. We're going to talk a little bit today about what the heck is an Illuminati anyway. Are they the same as us? Are they humans just like us? Or is there something different? To understand Illuminati races, we're going to take a little journey back further than the Christ story to about 250,000 BC, which is the beginning of a period that involved what our scientists call the Neanderthal man. Because to understand what an Illuminati race is, you need to understand the origins of that race with the Neanderthal and how it moved up from there. So we're going to talk a bit about that too. When we get into this afternoon, after the lunch break, we got another chart pack ready in case people want it for today, because we have the Atlantean maps. Okay, these are the maps of where Atlantis really was, and it shows now where the remnants of it still are. We're going to talk a bit about why that information was hidden from us when it's really still right in front of our faces. Why was Atlantis hidden? Why was it made to become a legend rather than a fact of history? There is a reason. There was a big reason for it. And that reason has to do with a big gold box that came to be known as the Ark of the Covenant. So we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant, the real Ark of the Covenant, which is a portal passage between Andromeda in the 9th dimension and comes down into Giza. It used to come down into Atlantis. Now this information on the Ark of the Covenant is in the book Voyagers, Volume 2, Secrets of Amenti. That was in the original printing of that, and it still will be in the second printing. But we didn't talk much about the big gold box that came to be known as the Ark of the Covenant. So we're going to talk about that too. And this afternoon, where Michael has gone over to get the Mylars and everything now, because we just threw this extra chart pack together, there's something called the Atlantean conspiracy. That is a fact of our history that has been very buried, because it's a fact of our history that's still going on now. There's a progression of events that have taken place since the year 25,500 BC that this era that we're in now is still directly a part of. This was supposed to be the closing cycle, the grand finale of the Atlantean conspiracy. The Atlantean conspiracy involves several races, so we'll talk about it after we talk about the Illuminati races, because it has been run by those races on this planet. So it's helpful to understand who they were before we see what they did and what they're still doing. Once we get through that, and there's some amazing pieces of history here that will put a lot of if we look at our history now, there's lots of different conflicting things, there's little pieces of known things, and there's a lot of speculation in between, where scientists and archaeologists and theologians try to piece things together from the little pieces of known or verifiable or recorded history that we have. We'll see a progression here, where those pieces of information that we consider valid, where they fit. They fit in, but they fit into a bigger picture. If we understand what the bigger picture is and what it has been, we'll be able to understand what we're walking around in today. Because right now, we're confronted with a unique set of circumstances. They're unique, not in a huge picture sense. If we go back for many millions of years and look at the history of the angelic human race, it's just another round of what we're used to putting up with. But it's unique in the sense that we're in a position where we don't have our race memory with us right now. It's with us, it's in the DNA, but it's not turned on yet. So none of us remember most of the history. So when we see this progression of events, it's quite unique compared to what we've been taught to believe about the nature of our history. If we can understand it, it'll make perfect sense what's going on right now when we look at contemporary society, the mainstream, when we look at the New Age movement, when we look at the UFO movement, because they're all connected. And they're all connected through the Atlantean conspiracy. So we'll get into that a bit this afternoon. And the big thing is, yesterday we got into the solutions. I like to put the solutions first, because by the time you get to the problem, it's not intimidating anymore. You know what to do about it. And that's why we covered yesterday, revealing the tribe names, because in the tribe names you have the power to activate your tribal shield, which is to activate the core DNA template, flame codes that correspond to Earth's grid codes. So you can begin to not only accelerate your own development, but you can begin to make a difference in what's running through the planetary grids. When we get through the Atlantean conspiracy, we're going to go into, and maybe I'll even start a little bit of that before, we're going to go into the round tables. Okay? The round tables were legendary in the Arthur period. They came up with the Arthurian legends. But they were long before that. The round tables were the signet councils, the people who were assigned to Stargate protection. The whole angelic human race was originally assigned to Stargate protection. When the Paladoria races came in, 798,000 BC, they would run round tables during stellar activation cycles for a purpose. The planet's grids had been damaged since the fall from Tara, which is described in the Amenti book. That fall took place 550 million years ago. And since that time, the planetary grids of Earth have been damaged, and there has been a major repair mission going on. The round tables were part of the repair mission, and the angelic human races, when they were seated here to conduct the repair mission. The repair mission involved being able to run the signet codes, which are those flame codes in the tribal shield in the DNA. They would open the Maharata current, which is the D12 frequency that comes down through your system from your D12 Maharic shield template, part of your anatomy. Once that current was opened, they could pull in the higher currents called the rainbow ray, which are the three currents of the primal light fields, the Kiriche primal light fields. You have what they call the blue flame, the gold flame, and the violet flame. And then from beyond there, out of the time matrix, you have the currents from the primal sound fields, which are vibrational waves that run down through the light fields. So they would open within their systems. The ancient races would open the Maharata current, and they would begin to move the rainbow ray through into their bodies. That would give them enough frequency to directly access the planetary grids. Now, once they were able to access the planetary grids, they had a full understanding of what it meant to run a round table. A round table was a group of them that would get together, and they were very specific at those times. We don't need to this time because we're going to use Tribe 13, which is if you can't find exactly what codes you have in your DNA template, because that's kind of hard to do because we're all kind of mixed-matched at this point. We have all sorts of things there. You can use the Tribal 13 formula of using Tribe 12 and Tribe 1 that gives you all the frequencies you need to activate your tribal shield. But in the old days, they used to have very intricate systems, mathematical systems, of knowing how many of what tribe to put at what location to get very specific coding into the specific stargates. Now, they would run at different periods of time, different intervals of time, during the stellar activation cycle on certain sites. They would run the frequencies together. They would link their frequencies together, so they would be able to create a critical mass energy imprint that would have a lot more power than one individual could have alone. And they would do it through a Maharic seal, though. When they linked their energy fields, they would not do a group Merkaba without having the personal Merkaba forming a barrier, because if you do Merkaba, which is activating the electromagnetic fields around you, if you do group energy work and you're combining your energies, but you do not use a Maharic seal, you will take on all of the energies of the group. If there's any karmic imprint in there, or miasms or distortions in the DNA, you will get them by field resonance. So people out there in the New Age movement that are teaching group energy work, group Merkaba, and things like that, that are not teaching you the Maharic seal, they don't know about it because it's been so long since we could actually run a Maharic seal on the planet. This is new for us because it's only since January 1st, 2000, the D12 frequency could be pulled through the grids. But since that time, anybody that's talking to anybody up there that's really on our side would have told them about the Maharic seal already. If you're in a group that's running group energy work without it, you are going to take on the frequencies that you're combining with. And they would never do that in the ancient tribal days because they knew that you could damage each other. And they had DNA templates that were working well. But they knew they could overload each other's systems if they took on their imprint. So it wasn't that they were worried about getting miasmic distortion. They were worried about overloading each other's body grids. So the Maharic seal was just standard thing you always do. But they would get together, get their Maharic seals, get their tribal shield activated, begin to run the rainbow ray, and they would do it in very specific ways called signet stands. There are ways of taking the bodies in a group and realizing that bodies are energy conduits. So they would stand them in specific positions on the locations that they chose, and they would form a Q site that we talked about yesterday. And in the chart packs that are coming, I've outlined the steps of how you form a Q site, so it's in there in writing. So if you want to play with it at home, it's in there. They would form a Q site individually, and then they would expand it to make their individual Q sites expand into one. So they were building a very strong Q site zone, which means they're anchoring quite a bit of D12 Christos frequency into the grids on that location. Once they had the Q site, then they would do a bit of dancing. They would stay in their locations, their positions within the tribal or within the stand, the signet stand, but then they would activate their own Merkaba fields to a higher rate to bring in more energy. And as they activated their Merkabas, they would be stimulating the energy and creating this exponential effect. You can do this even singly, but they would combine, they would each do their Merkaba, And it would create the effect of amplifying the energies that were already set there. So they would create a massive group Merkaba zone out of the Q site. Now, in the instructions that are in the chart packs, it gets into very easily how you can do that when you're doing personal Q sites. You can activate your Merkaba. You won't be able to get it fully activated until your DNA is fully activated, but you can increase its spin rates to a comfortable level, and they'll stop if it goes beyond what your DNA can handle. It just won't go higher than that rate. But they're very, very simple. The Merkaba is a set of electromagnetic spirals, one inverted, takes the shape of a star tetrahedron. But the most important thing to know about it, if you just want to think about it in easy terms, is it's just two interwoven spirals of energy, like cones of energy, one coming down over the top of your head, and another coming up with its center in the Earth's core, the small point, coming up like this around you. One goes clockwise, one goes counterclockwise. So one is spinning this way, and the other is spinning this way around you. There are ways of accelerating how fast they spin. In the ancient days, when the DNA templates weren't messed up, there would be something called the daily salutations that were done by the Breatharian races. The Breatharians were the first cycle, the first round of the Palladia races. They would use Merkaba spinning to bring in enough frequency into their bodies where they didn't need to eat or drink. They could self-sustain. Now, we can't do that yet because we have to clear and activate the DNA template. But the process is very, very simple. Movement. Once you activate the Maharata current in your body, and then you move that body, you begin to generate a spin. If you go around in a circle, if you start moving around in a circle, you start to make the fields move around you. They would literally use what's called spin dancing, and not really fast where they fall over. Comfortable rate, but the faster you could spin and hold your center without getting dizzy, the faster you would get the Merkaba rate going. Now they would spin clockwise first with the electrical spiral coming down over the head. This would bring more energy in faster from down, from up. Basically, the electrical spiral is taking energy, electrical energy, from the unified field, the interdimensional unified field, and running it down through your body into the Earth. The magnetic spiral is doing the opposite. It's pulling energy back up from the Earth and spiraling it up this way and out your body and back into the universal unified field. So they would first activate the electrical, and they would spin clockwise to do it. They would spin until they could begin to feel the movement of the energy moving around them, and then they would have a feel. They wouldn't even worry about the numbers. Some people teach Merkaba by ratios or numbers, like get this one spinning this fast and this one spinning that fast. They didn't worry about the numbers because they knew the body knew. The body knew how to regulate the relationships between the speeds. Usually numbers were used if you wanted to create an artificial configuration. If you wanted to control the spin over into a different rate than what would be its natural rates, and you wanted to make that ratio change between the natural ratio between electrical and magnetic spin, then you would start playing with numbers. Some systems taught that, and it was used in a way often to get people spinning things in the wrong directions, so they would be doing the opposite of what they thought they were. Some systems did that. A lot of that came out of the ancient Egyptian and Atlantian stuff, where they'd start regulating Merkaba spin and twisting teachings here and there to teach you to do it the wrong way for the effects they wanted, but not the effects you wanted. So you'd think you would be getting your magnetic going at a certain rate, but actually it wasn't your magnetic you were spinning that way. It was the electrical, because they tell you things like, one of them, they would say, like, turn to the left, assuming you'd start left here. Spin to the left. That would be, you'll have a clockwise spin. No, you don't. If you go to the left, you have a counterclockwise spin. Little twists in how the information was presented would get people who didn't know spinning their fields in the wrong direction. Now, the Merkaba controls the angular rotation of particle spin in your body. It controls the way frequency runs through your body. It's one of the ways that you can control how frequency runs through your body. So there were a lot of tricks out there of fallen angelics and Illuminati races playing with Merkaba and getting people to use it the wrong way. But the right way to use it was simply being aware that you had the two spirals, being aware that the body itself was coded to know the natural ratio relationships. No matter how fast you got one spinning, the other one would not spin at a different ratio. All right? It would increase with it, but it wouldn't go above that level of spin because the ratio was a fixed ratio and it was fixed in the DNA template. So they would basically spin, get the electrical Merkaba going, till it felt they could feel